Hey, how's it going everyone? Welcome back to It's Poppin', where we talk about everything pop-up camper related. So welcome to part 10 of the free pop-up camper renovation series. So in this video, we are going to show you how we make all of the curtains, cushions, and valances for this pop-up camper renovation. So a few things to keep in mind. I'm going to give you all of the total yardage and total amount of curtains that we used for our pop-up camper renovation, but just keep in mind that campers vary in the amount of cushions they have. They vary in their box length. So your camper might be different from the one we're doing, but nevertheless, I'm going to tell you how much we used. So as far as the curtains go, we used 15 pre-made curtain panels to do our curtains. As far as the bottom cushions go, the ones that you actually sit on, we used two different fabric materials, which you'll see. We used kind of a fake leather on the actual bottom of the bottom cushions, and we used a total of 2.5 yards of that, and there were a total of 5 cushions we used that on. Now on the top part of the bottom cushions, we used 4.5 yards of material, which if you use only one material for the whole bottom cushion and do 5 cushions like we did, that would have been a total of 7 yards. Now we also used the top of the bottom cushion material for the curtain tiebacks, as you'll see coming up in the video. So we did use a little bit extra for that. Now as far as the top cushions, we have a total of, I believe, 8 top cushions. 3 of them are pretty normal sized. 2 of them were kind of an L-shaped corner cushion, and then 3 of them were rather small. So for those, we used a total of 8 yards of fabric. Now we also used that same fabric material for our valances, and for our valances we used 4.5 yards. So if you do something similar where you use that same fabric material for your valances as you do your top cushions, we used a total of 12.5 yards. So that's just to give you some ballpark figures about where you might be for fabric material. But like I said before, it might be different. Now, all of the material, with the exception of the curtains and that fake leather, is that outdoor fabric material, and we sourced all of it from Joann Fabrics. And just a quick aside before we get into the video, if you guys enjoy these videos, the best thing you can do to help us is to subscribe and come back and watch more videos. So without further ado, this will be how to make all of the cushions, curtains, and valances for your pop-up camper.
So now we get to move to the more fun part of the renovation. We're starting with the cushion project. And so for this project, we're gonna need just a basic sewing machine. So this is just a Brother model. We just got it from Walmart, pretty basic. And then we're gonna use some upholstery thread. So we just have it in gray, so whatever color you need for your project. And then for our sewing machine, we're gonna be using these Brother needles. And so we're gonna be using the 14 needle for this work, since it's a little bit heavier canvas and the vinyl backing for the cushions. So that's kind of the big piece of equipment that we're gonna need. We're also going to need a seam ripper. We'll need a tape measure, some pins. It's just like our basic sewing box, has a little bit of everything in it. And so that's just sort of the basics that we're going to need for this project. So for our cushions, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be seam ripping apart one of each type of cushion that we have in the camper. So what you'll see here is that we've seam ripped the edges of one of the cushions, and then here is the matching cushion. And so what we'll do is we'll only completely seam rip apart one of each cushion type. And then for the rest of those cushions of that type, we will be able to use that as a pattern, and then we'll only have to seam rip out the zipper here on each one of those matching cushions. So it doesn't pay to seam rip this entire cushion when we really only need one to be able to use it as a pattern for each type. And so we'll do that for all of our different unique types of cushions. And once that is all done, we'll be able to use our patterns for each one of our cushions, and we'll be able to start making our brand new cushions. Okay, because these are chain stitched together, what's really easy about these is that you just have to sort of start the first one and then you'll be able to just pull that stitch all the way out, so that makes the process really quick for being able to pull apart these cushions. Okay, so next step, we're just going to get our patterns pinned on here. Make sure that when you're laying out your fabric, you have your pattern going in the direction that you want. So we want ours to go in the vertical direction. So we're gonna make sure to pin all of our patterns on so that way all of our pattern is running the same way on our cushions. All right, now that we have everything pinned, we're just gonna cut out our pattern. Make sure that you use a nice sharp shears. And you'll notice that your pattern might not be completely perfect given that you're using a pre-cut piece of material, but just sort of work the best that you can with it. Okay, so now we have our material all cut out here and we are ready to start putting things together. So we're gonna take our pins out and then I'm gonna hand the reins over to my mom, who is a much more talented sewer than I am. So as you can see, now we have our brand new cushion cover. My mom is super talented and got this done very quickly, and as you'll see on the video, she didn't pin anything together because she's just that good. But you know, basically all that you have to do is, you'll see you start off by doing the zipper first, so you put that on both sides of your material, then you will move to your front corners and you will sew your inner front corners, and then you'll move to your back corners, which include your zipper. So as you can see, the zipper kind of goes across this back corner through the center, and so you'll sew that, and then you'll just follow the line all the way around the edge and you'll have your cushion finish. This will vary by cushion design, but this is a pretty simple way to be able to put together a cushion, and looks really nice when you're all done. So now we just have to do like 14 more. All right, so the next thing we're gonna work on are the curtain panels. And so the curtains that we got are these Mainstays panels. They're a room darkening pair. And so we bought the 84-inch panels. It's gonna have quite a bit of extra, but we need 43-inch curtains overall. And so what we're going to do is we're going to measure down to 45 inches. So that'll give us 2 inches to be able to turn once and then turn again to do a 1-inch hem on the bottom. All right, so we measured 45 on the left, in the center, and on the right. And now we're just going to measure straight across with a yardstick. So we're gonna remove our pins in 3 spots here. Being careful not to touch the yardstick here. And then once we have our pins removed, we will go ahead and just draw a straight line across here in Sharpie, just a nice light line, so that way we have a nice straight line to cut. length, we're going to be adding the curtain tabs. So these are the tabs that run along the curtain tracks in our camper. I think it's called like a T-track tab or something like that. But we just took the curtain tabs from the old curtains and seam ripped them off and are going to be using them on these curtains. But you can also buy these online, I think, for relatively cheap as well. So I'm going to be affixing these to the back side of the curtain along the top. I'm going to start about 1 inch in, and I'm going to leave the top part of the track hanging off the top of the curtain, so that way the curtain doesn't get caught up in that track when you're sliding it along. And I'm going to be affixing 6 of these across the 30-inch panel, and we're going to be doing that about every 5.5 inches. This is approximate, but just that's sort of how it worked out with the number of curtain tabs that we have. You could, of course, do more or less depending upon how you like your curtains to gather. So now I'm just going to go ahead and sew all these on. So you'll notice with this that I started off with just a simple stitch. This is a 2.5 millimeter stitch. And I did a reverse stitch on either side, so that way when you're pulling on these curtain tabs that the stitching doesn't come loose. So now I'm just going to repeat that process for the rest of them. Alright, so after we got all of the tabs put on all of the curtains, we hung them all up in the camper and realized that the curtains on the end really sort of impeded the airflow to those bunk ends when you have the AC running. Typically when we camp, we don't close those curtains because it's just the two of us, but we decided that for this camper that we were going to add a little bit more airflow in case people do want the privacy of those curtains on the bunk ends. And so what we're going to be doing is adding a mesh panel into these curtains. We're going to do the mesh panel about 12 inches down from the top, so that way you still get a little bit of the gray color curtain underneath the valance, and then you'll have a white mesh section. So that's what I'm going to tackle next. Okay, so for our mesh panel, you'll see that I have cut out and hemmed our mesh to be the same width as our curtain, which is 30 inches. And then what I've done is I've gone, I don't know, good side to good side, so face to face, and I've just done a 1/2 inch hem all the way across. And so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open this material and fold back the area that I just hemmed, and then I'm going to put a top stitch in, so that way it gives it a nice clean look on the front and you don't see any of that extra mesh where the mesh meets the curtain. Okay, so now as you can see, we have a nice top stitch in there, so it gives it that really nice finished look where the two pieces bind together. So now I'm just going to repeat that process for the other side of the mesh to the bottom half of the curtain, and we'll be finished. So we're going to start working on the valances now. So what I've already gone ahead and done is cut out the valance panels, and so these are 54-inch wide panels because that's the width of our fabric, and we went with that because we wanted our pattern to run vertically just like it will on the cushions. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sew together the necessary number of panels for each of the 4 sides of the camper. So in our case, we have 2 panels on the bunk ends, so our shorter ends, and then 4 panels together for each of the sides. So in total we have 4, 4, 2, and 2. And so, like I said, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sew together the number of panels that I need, and then I'll also turn a finished edge on the open edges. And then I'm going to move ahead and I will turn a seam and eventually finish off all of the long ends of the panels, but I need to put them together first. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn an edge, and so I have one edge done right now, and so essentially this edge will serve as the slide for the top of our curtains. So through this casing is where our elastic will run so that it will stretch from end to end, and so I will do that to this side, and then I will do the same thing. I'll turn an edge on the other side, and then this panel will be done. All right, so now I'm all finished with this panel. So as you can see, I've done seams on either side, so we have a nice turned edge, so that way we get no fraying. And then we'll use one of these, they're identical, but one of them will have the cord run through it, so it'll act as a casing. And so now I just need to do this a few more times. Okay, so we're about to put the finishing touches on our curtains. So we finished the valances, we've shortened our curtains, we've put the mesh panels into the bunk ends, and we've sewn our curtain tabs on. So now it's time to make the tie backs. And so this is a completely finished tie back, and our tie backs, we chose to make them out of the fabric that we used for the bottom cushions to sort of incorporate that color back up in again. And so these are 2-inch wide tie backs, and you'll see that they have Velcro sewn on opposite ends, so that way they'll have a Velcro closure, and once I get them all made, they will then get mounted onto the edge of one of the curtains. And so I'm going to walk you through how to make the tie backs. It's a pretty simple process. So I already have pre-cut my material, and this material is, I think, 5 inches wide, so that way it allows for the seam allowance, and then it is 19 inches long. You'll see that I left the border on the edge, and that's because I'm going to be turning the edge in, and so I was able to utilize that little bit of fabric. So the first step is that we're just going to fold it in half, and then I'm going to create a 1/2 inch hem going along, or a 1/2 inch seam going along here, so that way we create this tube shape. Okay, so now that we have this sewn together with the hem here, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip it inside out. And so we just start off by flipping it here, and then I will just pull it through. It's a little bit tricky once you first start it, but once you get going, it'll just eventually all pull through here. And so what I did is, you'll notice that I put the good side of the material on the inside when I created this hem, and that's so when I get this all turned, that the hem is actually hidden on the inside, and so it gives you a really nice crisp finished edge. It makes it look a little bit more impressive than it actually is. So pretty quick process for making all of these tie backs. Okay, so now I have this all ironed, and as you can see, I've put the seam toward the bottom edge. You can put yours in the middle, but this is just the easiest place for me. And so the next thing I'm going to be doing is turning in these edges. So I'm just turning it towards the center, and like I mentioned before, that will hide that extra little bit of edge on the fabric there. That's why I was able to use that white edge. And then the next thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be affixing this Velcro. And so this Velcro is 3/4 inch Velcro, and it is sew on, and it's cut into 2-inch strips, so it'll go just like this. And when I affix the Velcro, I'll make sure that it is on opposite sides. So if I put this one here, it's going to need to go on the opposite side over here once I turn this edge. So just make sure that you have a hook on one side and a loop on the other, and that they're on opposite sides of the fabric. Okay, so now I have all of the tie backs finished, and so the next thing I'm going to do is affix them to the curtain panels. And so I'm only going to be putting these on the corner curtain panels, and so in our camper we have a total of 13 panels, but we will only have 8 tie backs. And so I try and mount these on the sort of outside edge, if that makes sense, of the windows, so that way when we go to wrap them around, it's on the outside of the curtain, but really it doesn't matter too much. And so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be sewing them 24 inches down from the top. For us, that's the appropriate spot. We hung these up already in the camper, and we sort of looked at where it hit with the valances and where we were happy with the height, and so we're going to go at 24 inches. And to sew these, I will be putting, I'll be sewing them on the back side here, and it'll be back side to front side like this. And so I'll just sew right along this edge here, and that will be enough to affix the curtain. All right, so I have this sewn on here, and so you'll see this is the back side of the curtain, and I just did a nice stitch along there. You can see it, it's a little bit darker thread. And so now when we go to close these curtains, we will be able to get a nice wrap around like this. And so the biggest thing to be aware of is just make sure, however you sew your curtains, that you make sure when you're putting these on, or these tie backs on, that you keep the seam toward the back, because you don't want that seam out in front, because you did such a nice job making them like this to begin with. So that's it for all of these. I'm just going to repeat the process 8 more times.
All right, guys, so here is the finished product. We'll start off showing you all the cushions first. They turned out really well. And there's the old zipper that we used, but it definitely saved us some money. I'll kind of show you some of the seams. Still some loose threads on them, but obviously those will come off at some point. And then there's the other side. Here's one of the bottom cushions. As you can see, it has the kind of leatherette or fake leather, faux leather on the bottom there on the top part. Next up is the curtain, and this is just one of the regular ones that's on the side of the camper. And there's all the channel clips, and then of course here's our tie back. But really the curtains aren't horribly complicated. All right, here is one of the bunk in curtains. Obviously you can tell what it's got the mesh in it. So here's how those turned out. And of course this one also has a tie back on it as well. And then once again, here's the clips. And here's just a quick overview of how the front looks at the mesh. And then of course up at the top, those clips just kind of peek out just a little bit. And finally, here is the valance. Kind of hard to show it all on one shot, but and just so you guys know what we elected to do for where the elastic was, we replaced that with some white paracord, because, well, that's what we kind of had some handy of, that we had enough of. And so we just put a simple loop, which will go around the screw in the roof, and threaded that all the way through the valance to the other side. Now, we have not done a knot on the other side yet, because we have yet to measure it for an exact length of what we need, but that'll be how we work that. And once again, the valance is pretty simple, but that's how we did the cordage. Alright guys, so that's it for part 10 of the free pop-up camper renovation series. So I wanted to show you guys all of the new cushions, curtains, and valances installed in the pop-up, but the higher powers that be told me that I couldn't do that because it would totally ruin the next video, which will be, of course, like the big reveal, the before and after shots of what the pop-up camper started as and where it is now. So unfortunately, you guys are gonna have to wait until part 11 to see how everything looks all put together. But hopefully we see you there at part 11. If not, hopefully we see you guys out there camping.